Tom had never expected his journey to end like this. His small exploration ship, the Starseeker, was supposed to glide smoothly across the unknown sector. It had been a mission of mapping, not of danger. Yet space was never gentle. A sudden storm of charged particles struck his vessel, burning through circuits and knocking him off course. Warning lights flashed red across the control board as the ship shuddered under the stress. He tried everything to regain control, but the engines failed. Gravity from a nearby planet pulled him down, dragging him into a fiery descent. The planet below glowed with a mix of green forests and silver rivers. Tom barely had time to set the emergency stabilizers before the ship tore through the atmosphere. Heat flared against the hull and alarms screamed in his ears. He held onto the controls, heart pounding, and guided the ship as best as he could. With a deafening crash, the vessel skidded across rough ground, carving a long scar into the soil before it finally stopped. Smoke filled the cabin and Tom coughed as he fought to breathe. Shaking, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stumbled out. The air outside was strange, filled with a light sweetness he had never smelled before. The sky shimmered with two suns casting shadows in opposite directions. His ship lay broken behind him, smoke rising from the twisted metal. For the first time in his career, Tom felt utterly stranded. He took a few cautious steps, scanning the horizon. Towering trees stood tall, their leaves glowing faintly as if they held light within. Strange birds with crystal wings darted through the air, leaving trails of sparkles behind. The planet was beautiful, but Tom knew beauty often hid danger. He kept his hand near the emergency blaster at his belt and moved toward a small hill for a better view. As he climbed, a sound reached his ears. At first he thought it was the wind, but then he recognized the sharp cry of someone in distress. It echoed faintly through the trees. His instincts told him to ignore it and focus on survival. Yet his heart reminded him that he was still human, and humans never turned away from a cry for help. Tom gritted his teeth, checked his blaster, and followed the sound. The forest opened into a clearing where chaos unfolded before his eyes. A young woman stood at the center, surrounded by armored figures who carried glowing blades. Her clothing was unlike anything Tom had seen, shimmering like liquid silver, and a crest shaped like a star marked her chest. Her long hair shone with a faint blue tint under the light of the suns. She held a small dagger in trembling hands, trying to defend herself, but she was outnumbered. At least 6 attackers circled her, their movements sharp and coordinated. Tom did not know who she was or why she was being hunted, but he could see she was desperate and alone. Without hesitation, he raised his blaster and fired. A beam of light streaked across the clearing, striking the ground near the nearest attacker. The figures turned in shock, their glowing eyes focusing on him. Tom sprinted forward, shouting to draw their attention. The attackers roared in a guttural language he could not understand and charged at him. One of them swung his blade, but Tom ducked low and rolled to the side. He fired again, hitting the warrior squarely in the chest. The figure dropped with a hiss, armor sparking. The others pressed in, forcing Tom to retreat closer to the woman. She looked at him with wide eyes, surprised by his sudden arrival. He gave her a quick nod and pulled her behind him. "Stay low," he said firmly, though he doubted she understood his words. The attackers came at them in pairs, moving fast. Tom fired at one, then kicked another back with all his strength. His heart raced as sweat dripped down his face. He was outnumbered, but the fight lit something inside him. He could not let the attackers take her. She was helpless, and he had the training to fight. This was no longer about survival. It was about protecting someone who could not protect herself. The woman slashed with her dagger when an attacker came too close, cutting across his arm. Her strike was clumsy, but it gave Tom an opening. He fired again, taking the enemy down. Together, they managed to drive the others back. The remaining attackers exchanged sharp cries, then fled into the forest, vanishing into the glowing trees. Tom lowered his weapon, chest heaving from the battle. Silence returned to the clearing. The woman stared at him, her eyes filled with both fear and wonder. Tom could see she was young, perhaps not much older than himself, and carried herself with a kind of grace that marked her as someone important. He lowered his blaster and raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "My name is Tom," he said clearly. "I don't know if you understand me, but I'm not your enemy." The woman tilted her head, studying his face. Then, in a soft voice that carried an accent unlike anything Tom had ever heard, she spoke. "Tom," she repeated, as if testing the word. She touched her chest lightly and said, "Mira." Tom gave a small smile. At least they had names now. He pointed to the forest where the attackers had fled. "They will come back," he warned. "We need to move." Mira seemed to understand the urgency. She nodded quickly and motioned for him to follow. Together they left the clearing, weaving through the strange glowing trees. Tom kept his blaster ready, scanning for movement. Mira moved gracefully, even with the fear in her eyes, as if the forest was part of her world. She led him through hidden paths until they reached a stream that shimmered like silver under the twin suns. As they paused to drink and catch their breath, Mira finally spoke again. Her words were broken, but Tom could piece together some meaning. She pointed to herself. "Princess Mira," she said softly. She then raised her hand upward and spread her fingers as if pointing to a throne. "Queen Mother, danger." Tom's eyes widened. "Princess." That explained the strange crest on her clothing and the attackers who had hunted her. She was not just anyone, she was royalty, and if her mother was a queen, then this planet was not simply wild and uninhabited. It had a civilization, perhaps even an empire. Mira's face grew tense as she tried to explain more. She pointed back toward the clearing and said a word he did not know, but her tone carried weight. Then she tapped the crystal at her neck, which glowed faintly, and held her hand over her heart. Finally, she looked at him with pleading eyes. Tom did not understand every detail, but he understood enough. She was in danger. Her mother was a queen, and enemies were after them. He could have walked away, left her to her own people, and focused on repairing his ship. But when he looked at her, tired, frightened, yet still strong, he knew he could not abandon her. He had saved her once, and now his path was tied to hers. "We'll make it," Tom said firmly, even though she might not catch the words. He pointed forward. "Lead the way." Mira gave a faint smile of gratitude, then guided him deeper into the forest. Behind them, faint echoes of the attackers carried through the trees, proof that the danger had not ended. Tom tightened his grip on his blaster and walked at her side. Whatever world he had crashed into, he was no longer just a stranded explorer. He had risked his life for the alien princess, and there was no turning back. The suns drifted lower in the sky as Tom followed Princess Mira through the glowing forest. The air was cooler now, and the faint shimmer from the leaves grew brighter with the approaching dusk. They had walked for hours, guided by Mira's sure steps. Though Tom was exhausted from the crash and the fight, he kept moving. He had no idea where they were going, but he trusted her to lead the way. Finally, the trees parted, and Tom saw the first signs of civilization. A tall white wall rose ahead, smooth and shining as if carved from crystal. At its top, guards stood with long spears tipped with glowing blades. Beyond the wall, towers reached into the sky, their shapes curved like the petals of flowers catching the light of the suns. Rivers of silver water flowed between the structures, reflecting the city in shimmering patterns. It was unlike anything Tom had ever seen on Earth. This was not a wild frontier. It was a kingdom of beauty and power. Mira looked back at him and gave a small nod, as if encouraging him to be calm. She walked toward the gates, and the guards immediately noticed her. Their eyes widened in shock, then relief. They lowered their weapons and called out in their language. The gates opened quickly, and Mira hurried inside, motioning for Tom to follow. He hesitated for a moment, knowing he was about to enter a place where he truly did not belong. But the sound of pursuit still echoed faintly in the distance, so he stepped forward. Inside the walls, Tom was struck by the sight of the capital. Streets paved with shining stone stretched wide, lined with glowing lanterns that floated in the air without support. The people of Valora moved gracefully through the city, their robes glimmering in colors that shifted with the light. Some had hair like Mira, faintly blue, while others had silver or green shades that seemed natural to them. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the energy of their world. Many stopped to stare at Tom as he entered, whispering to each other. He could feel their curiosity and also their unease. To them, he was a stranger from the stars. Mira led him through the streets toward the largest tower in the city. It rose higher than all the rest, its surface glowing with an inner light. Guards lined the entrance, their armor shining, their faces stern. They bowed deeply when Mira approached, but their eyes quickly shifted to Tom. Hands tightened on weapons, and suspicion filled their gaze. Tom raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. Mira spoke to them quickly, her voice calm but firm, and the guard stepped aside with clear reluctance. Inside, the tower was even more breathtaking. The walls were lined with flowing patterns of crystal, pulsing with energy like a living heartbeat. Stairs curved upward in spirals leading to a great hall at the top. Mira guided Tom there, her expression determined. When they reached the hall, Tom's eyes widened at the sight before him. A throne of silver crystal stood at the far end, surrounded by banners marked with the star-shaped crest. Seated upon it was a tall woman whose presence filled the room. Her hair was pure silver, flowing like liquid light, and her robe shimmered with threads of gold. A crown rested on her head, shaped like a rising sun. Her eyes glowed with deep power, sharp and commanding. This could only be Queen Alara, ruler of Valora. The queen's gaze fixed on Tom immediately. She did not speak at first, only studied him with the piercing weight of someone who judged both body and soul in a single glance. The silence in the hall was heavy. Then she spoke in her language, her voice firm and resonant. Mira hurried to her side and began explaining, gesturing with her hands, pointing toward Tom, then toward herself, then mimicking a fight. The queen listened with a frown, her eyes narrowing. When Mira finished, Queen Alara turned her gaze back to Tom. "You are human," the queen said suddenly in broken but clear speech. Her voice carried authority even with the unfamiliar accent. "From the sky," Tom swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, my name is Tom. My ship crashed. I had no choice but to land here." The queen's eyes flashed. "And yet you found my daughter. You fought with her. You brought her back." Her words held suspicion, as if saving Mira was not enough to prove his innocence. Tom stood straighter, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "I heard her cry for help. She was surrounded. I could not leave her to die. On my world, we do not turn away when someone is in danger." The queen tilted her head slightly, studying him further. The guards around the hall shifted, their armor clinking softly. Mira spoke again, her voice urgent. She gestured at Tom, her hands describing the battle in the forest. She even mimicked his blaster, pointing her fingers and making a sharp sound. A faint smile touched her lips as she spoke, showing her admiration. But the queen's expression remained stern. Finally, Queen Alara raised her hand. "Enough." The hall grew silent again. She looked directly at Tom. "You saved Mira. For this I owe thanks. But you are unknown. You are danger. My people will not trust you." "I cannot trust you." Tom felt the weight of her words. He understood her fear. To her, he was not just a hero, but also a risk. He was an outsider who might bring chaos to her carefully guarded world. Still, he refused to be cowed. "I don't ask for trust," he said firmly. "I only ask for a chance to prove I mean no harm." The queen considered him for a long moment. Then she gave a command in her language. Guards stepped forward and surrounded Tom. His hands twitched toward his blaster, but Mira quickly shook her head, silently begging him not to resist. He let the guards take his weapon. They did not bind him, but they stood close, making it clear he was under watch. "You will stay here," the queen said coldly. "You will not leave without my word. If you are true, time will show it. If you are false, we will see." Mira's eyes widened in protest, and she spoke quickly to her mother. But Queen Alara raised her hand again, ending the discussion. Mira lowered her head reluctantly, though she cast a worried glance at Tom. The guards motioned for him to follow, leading him to a chamber within the tower. The room was not a prison, but it was no freedom either. It was spacious, with crystal walls that glowed faintly, and a soft bed of woven light fibers. A small window looked out over the city, showing the glowing rivers and shining towers. Yet guards stood outside the door, their presence a constant reminder that he was a stranger under suspicion. Tom sat on the bed, staring out the window. He could not deny the beauty of Valora, but he also felt the weight of being watched. He had risked his life to save Mira, and still the queen saw him as a possible threat. He could not blame her, but the sting of mistrust was sharp. He clenched his fists, wondering if he would ever be allowed to prove himself. Later, Mira came to see him. The guards allowed her in, though they stayed close. She smiled gently, her presence like a light in the heavy room. She spoke softly, trying to reassure him, though he understood little of her words. Still, he understood her kindness. She placed her hand over her heart, then over his, a gesture that carried clear meaning. Gratitude. Trust. Tom felt a spark of hope. Perhaps the queen doubted him, but Mira believed. And if she believed, then maybe in time her mother would too. He only had to survive long enough to show his true heart. Outside, the sun sank fully below the horizon, and the city of Valora glowed with 1,000 lights. yet shadows gathered beyond its walls. The attackers who had hunted Mira had not given up. They watched from the dark forest, waiting for another chance. And soon Tom would find himself drawn deeper into a conflict he could not yet understand. Tom's days in the Tower of Valora passed slowly. He was treated with courtesy, but never with freedom. Guards watched him wherever he went. They allowed him to walk in the gardens of the palace, but the crystal gates always stayed locked. The people he passed looked at him with curiosity and sometimes with fear. To them, he was not only a stranger, but also a reminder of the unknown sky. Still, Tom did not despair. He had survived a crash, a battle, and suspicion. If he could endure that, he could endure the Queen's judgment. What mattered most was earning trust, and he knew that trust could only be built through time and action. Mira often visited him. She brought him fruits that glowed faintly with soft light and tasted sweeter than anything from Earth. She taught him words of her language, pointing at things and repeating the sounds until he could mimic them. Slowly, Tom learned. He discovered that the people of Valora called themselves the Valorans, and their city was named Lorraine. The shining rivers carried energy from the great crystal heart that lay deep within the planet. That crystal gave power to their world, lighting their homes and feeding their machines. Without it, Valora would fall into darkness. One evening, while the suns dipped low and the sky glowed purple, Mira came to his chamber with a look of worry. She spoke quickly, her voice sharp with concern. Tom caught only some words, but he understood the feeling. She pointed outside the window toward the forest beyond the city walls. Then she mimicked battle, clashing her hands together as if striking with weapons. Tom leaned closer. "Enemy?" he guessed. Mira nodded, her eyes wide. She drew the star crest of her people in the air, then sliced across it with her hand. An enemy force was moving against the Queen. Later that night, Tom's suspicions were confirmed. Queen Alara summoned him to the Great Hall. Guards flanked the throne, their weapons glowing brighter than usual. The Queen's face was stern, her silver eyes filled with shadow. "Our scouts speak," she said in her slow but clear voice. "The enemy stirs. The ones who hunted Mira gather in the dark. They seek the crystal. They seek the throne." Tom listened carefully. He had seen enough battles on Earth to recognize the signs of an approaching war. He took a step forward, careful not to seem too bold. "If they attack, your city will need defense. You cannot simply wait." The generals standing near the Queen muttered among themselves. One of them, tall and broad, stepped forward with a sneer. His armor was carved with golden lines marking his rank. "Why should we listen to him?" The general growled. "He is no Valoran. He is weak, small, and untested. He carries strange weapons, but no honor. He does not belong here." Tom kept his eyes steady on the general. He did not rise to anger. He knew respect was earned by patience. "You are right," he said calmly. "I am not Valoran. I cannot claim your honor. But I do know war. I have fought to survive in places where the enemy was stronger, faster, and greater in number. If you dismiss me, I will not argue. But if you let me help, I may save lives." The general snorted, but the Queen raised her hand for silence. Her gaze lingered on Tom, searching for any falsehood. Then she spoke. "You will advise. Nothing more. My generals will lead, but we will hear your voice." It was a small victory, yet Tom accepted it. A chance was all he needed. Over the next days, Tom walked with the generals through the defense lines. He saw how the city walls glowed with energy from the crystal, forming a barrier stronger than stone. He studied the guards' weapons, blades of light powered by small shards of crystal. He learned how their ships hovered above the towers, silent and swift. Valora was advanced, but Tom noticed something troubling. Their army was trained for honor, not survival. They fought in formations with rules that valued glory over practicality. It was beautiful, but it was also fragile. "The enemy will not fight with rules," Tom said during a council. He picked up a piece of crystal from the table and set it against a carved figure that represented the wall. "They will strike where you do not expect. They will cut off your supply lines. They will try to divide your strength." The generals frowned at his words, but Mira, who sat beside her mother, leaned forward eagerly. She had watched Tom explain with clear focus, and she believed in him. "He is right," she said in her language. "He saved me when others would not. He knows how enemies think." The Queen's eyes flicked from her daughter to the human. She said nothing, but Tom could sense her thoughts turning. That night, Tom returned to his chamber, weary from the council. He stood at the window staring out at the glowing city. For the first time since his crash, he felt a strange connection to this place. He had risked his life for Mira, but now he realized he was risking something more. He was placing his faith in a people who might never accept him. As he gazed at the stars, a shadow moved across the garden below. Tom tensed. The figure was cloaked, slipping silently through the glowing plants. Guards stood nearby, but they had not seen. Tom's instincts sharpened. He grabbed a small shard of crystal that Mira had given him for light and slipped out of his chamber. The guards at his door moved to stop him, but Tom pointed quickly to the shadow in the garden. The guards followed his gaze and immediately shouted an alarm. The cloaked figure dashed toward the wall, moving faster than any normal person. Tom sprinted after him, his boots pounding against the crystal floor. He leapt down the steps, chasing the intruder through the garden paths. The intruder pulled a small device from his cloak and hurled it against the ground. A burst of dark smoke filled the air, choking and blinding. Tom covered his mouth and pushed forward, his eyes stinging. He heard the clash of weapons as guards rushed in. When the smoke cleared, the figure was gone. But something else was missing too. Tom's heart sank as he looked at the pedestal near the garden's center. A crystal shard that had glowed brightly only moments ago now lay shattered on the ground. The intruder had stolen part of the city's power. When Tom returned to the hall, the Queen's face was grim. She looked at him with suspicion. "You chase. Yet the thief escapes. Why?" Tom met her gaze without fear. "Because they planned well. They know your defenses. They know where to strike. You need to prepare for more." This was only a test. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Mira stepped forward quickly, her voice sharp with urgency. She defended Tom, telling her mother how he had seen the danger before anyone else. But the Queen raised her hand again, silencing her daughter. "You speak with fire," the Queen told Tom. "But fire burns if not controlled. You will remain bound here. You may speak, but you will not act without my word." The words stung, but Tom only bowed his head slightly. He had spoken his truth. Whether the Queen listened or not was her choice. Later, when he was alone again, Mira came to him. Her face was troubled, her eyes filled with both gratitude and worry. She sat beside him and placed her hand gently on his arm. "Trust," she said softly, using one of the words he had taught her in his language. "I trust," Tom gave a tired smile. "And I trust you," he answered. Outside the palace, the enemy forces gathered in secret. The stolen shard glowed in their leader's hand, feeding their weapons with new strength. Soon they would march against Valora. And when they did, Tom knew the city would face a storm unlike any it had ever seen. The city of Loran had not seen a night so quiet in many cycles. The twin moons rose over the shining towers, casting silver light across the crystal streets. Tom stood in his chamber, staring out the window at the city below. The stolen shard of crystal had been returned, but he knew the danger had not passed. Whoever had struck the palace once would try again. Mira visited him, her expression serious. She held his hands firmly, the warmth of her touch giving him strength. "They will come," she said softly, using the word Tom had begun to understand. Her eyes searched his face. "Prepare," Tom nodded. "I will do everything I can to help," he said. He had studied the city's defenses, spoken with the generals, and memorized the patterns of the guards. Yet he knew the real challenge would not come from walls or weapons. It would come from the enemy's cunning, from their willingness to break rules. The following morning, Tom was summoned to the Great Hall. Queen Alara sat upon her throne, her eyes sharp as ever. Generals and advisors surrounded her. Mira stood beside her mother, her hand lightly touching the Queen's arm. Tom entered slowly, feeling the weight of every gaze upon him. "The enemy grows bold," the Queen said, her voice echoing through the hall. "Scouts report movement near the outer forests. They seek the crystal heart of Valora. They will strike at dawn." Tom stepped forward. "If they attack at dawn, they will strike where defenses are weakest. Their numbers are greater than what the city can hold at the walls. We must use strategy, not only strength." The generals murmured among themselves, but the Queen raised her hand for silence. "You speak as if you know war," she said, her tone cautious. "Yet you are still a human. How can your judgment match that of Valora's trained commanders?" "I have fought with less," Tom said calmly. "I know how to survive. I know how to turn weaknesses into strength. If you allow me, I will help plan." Queen Alara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Very well. You may advise, but you will act only under my command. Disobey and your life is mine, Tom bowed. I understand, Your Majesty. That evening, Tom worked with the generals to plan defenses. He suggested changing the patrol patterns, hiding small units in unexpected locations and setting traps for the enemy. Some generals laughed quietly, doubting the human's ideas. Others studied him, curiosity replacing doubt. Mira stayed close, learning quickly from his explanations. As night deepened, Tom took a walk along the palace walls. The city glowed softly under the moons, but beyond the walls, shadows moved. He could see the enemy forces gathering in the distant forest. They were not numerous, but each figure carried energy weapons and armor that reflected light like the stars. Their movements were coordinated, disciplined, and dangerous. Tom returned to the hall to speak with the queen. Mira followed, her hand brushing against his arm. "We cannot fail," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Not now." The queen looked at him with an unreadable expression. "Tomorrow your loyalty will be tested. If you fail, Valora may fall. If you succeed, perhaps trust can grow. Do not waste this chance." Tom nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had risked his life for Mira once. He would do it again, no matter the cost. Dawn came quickly. The twin suns peeked over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city. Tom stood atop the highest tower with Mira, scanning the forest below. The enemy had moved closer, preparing their attack. He could see their leader, cloaked in dark armor, directing the soldiers with gestures. When the first wave of attackers advanced, the city guards moved into position. Tom shouted instructions, directing hidden units and traps. The first clash was violent but brief. The attackers underestimated Valora's energy barriers, and many fell to the hidden defenses Tom had suggested. Yet the enemy adapted quickly, changing formations and targeting the city's supply lines. Tom moved through the battle, guiding soldiers, helping to reinforce weak points, and rescuing those trapped in fallen structures. Mira followed him closely, assisting in communications and providing healing energy from her crystal pendant. Together, they formed a small but effective team. At one point, Tom spotted a group of enemies moving toward the palace tower, where the queen and her advisors were stationed. He ran without hesitation, throwing a smoke grenade to slow their advance. He engaged the attackers directly, using his blaster to disarm and disable them. Mira provided cover, striking with precise energy bursts from her pendant. The fight was fierce. Tom was hit once in the shoulder, but he pushed through the pain. His mind focused entirely on protecting Mira and the queen. He blocked attacks, returned fire, and even used fallen debris as barriers. By the time the enemies retreated, several had been captured by Valora's forces, and the rest fled into the forests beyond. When the battle ended, the palace grounds were littered with smoke and scorched earth. Guards tended to the wounded while engineers repaired minor damage to the walls. Tom was brought before the queen once more, his uniform scorched and bloodied, but his expression calm. "You risked your life," the queen said, her voice steady, but not without emotion. "You defended the city when others faltered. Yet you are not free. You act with honor, but you are still bound." "Why?" Tom met her eyes. "Because loyalty is more than action," he said. "It is a choice. I chose to protect Mira and Valora, even at the cost of my life. I will continue to do so as long as I am here." Mira stepped forward, her hand brushing against Tom's arm. "He is true," she said simply. "His heart is ours." The queen's gaze softened slightly, though her expression remained firm. "Your courage cannot be denied. But Valora is fragile. You are strong. Yet your presence could influence my daughter and the people in ways I cannot predict. You will remain under watch until your loyalty is proven in more than battle." Tom bowed his head, accepting the decision. He understood the queen's caution. Trust was earned not only in moments of action, but in time. He had proven himself in battle, but Valora required more. Later that evening, Mira visited him in his chamber. She brought food and a small crystal that pulsed gently in her hand. "You saved us," she said, her voice soft. "I cannot thank you enough." Tom smiled, despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "I do not need thanks," he said. "I only need to know you are safe." Mira's eyes sparkled with gratitude and something more. "You are brave," she said. "Braver than any human I have ever known." Tom felt a warmth at her words, but he focused on the task ahead. The enemy had not retreated for good. They would return stronger and more determined. Valora's future was fragile, and the queen's warning echoed in his mind. He could not allow Mira, the queen, or the city to fall. That night, he trained with a small group of elite guards. He taught them techniques from his world, showing how to use obstacles and terrain to their advantage. Mira watched, absorbing every lesson, learning how to defend herself and assist others. The days that followed were tense. Every shadow seemed a threat, every movement in the forest a potential ambush. Tom and Mira explored the outer defenses, setting hidden traps and practicing communication signals. Slowly, the human and the Velerans began to trust each other. Yet, despite the preparation, Tom remained bound by the Queen's orders. He could advise, fight, and save lives, but he could not act independently. The restriction frustrated him, but he understood. The Queen's caution was not cruelty. It was responsibility. Valora's safety came before all else. Then the enemy struck again. A small but powerful force breached the city walls under cover of darkness. Tom was there immediately, moving through the streets, guiding guards and protecting civilians. Mira followed closely, helping where she could. The battle was intense, with energy blasts lighting up the night and the hum of blades cutting through the air. Tom faced the enemy leader directly. The figure was tall, armored in black with glowing red lines, and wielded a weapon that pulsed with stolen crystal energy. Tom knew he could not defeat this enemy alone. He used strategy and quick thinking, drawing the leader into a trap near the palace gates. The leader stumbled into a net of energy threads, immobilized while guards surrounded him. The city had survived another attack. Tom's body was bruised and battered, yet he felt a surge of satisfaction. He had risked his life to protect Mira and Valora, proving his loyalty in the most immediate and dangerous way. When he was brought before the Queen again, she studied him carefully. Mira stood beside her, eyes shining with admiration and relief. "You have fought bravely," the Queen said. "Your actions saved lives, yet I cannot allow freedom lightly. Loyalty must be constant not only in battle. You will remain bound, but your place here is no longer a secret. Valora knows your courage, and so does my daughter." Tom bowed his head, accepting the judgment. He had risked everything and had survived, but his journey of loyalty was far from over. Mira's hand rested on his arm, a silent promise that she believed in him. And as the suns rose once more over Valora, Tom knew that the trials ahead would demand even more courage, wisdom, and heart. The city of Lauren rested in quiet for only a few cycles after the last attack. The enemy had retreated, their forces weakened and scattered. Tom stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the glowing rivers and shining towers, feeling the weight of every life he had helped save. Though the city seemed safe, he knew the battle had not truly ended. Danger always lurked beyond the horizon, and Valora's fragile peace could shatter in an instant. Mira appeared at his side, her long hair glowing softly under the twin moons. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You have done much," she said, her voice calm yet filled with emotion. "You saved Valora. You saved me. The Queen must see this." Tom nodded, his expression steady. "I hope she does. I do not fight for praise. I fight to protect, but perhaps now it is time for her to judge not only my courage but my heart." That morning, Queen Alara summoned him to the Great Hall. The sunlight spilled through the crystal windows, illuminating the intricate patterns on the floors and walls. The generals and advisors were present, as well as Mira, who stood at her mother's side. Tom entered slowly, feeling the intensity of the Queen's gaze upon him. "You have proven loyalty and bravery," Queen Alara said, her voice echoing through the hall. "Your actions in the battles against our enemies were beyond question. Yet your presence remains a challenge. You are human, a foreigner. Your influence upon my daughter and the people cannot be ignored. Now I must make a choice." Tom bowed respectfully. "I accept whatever you decide, Your Majesty. My only desire is the safety of Valora and its people." The Queen studied him carefully. Her silver eyes reflected both caution and contemplation. "You have risked your life for Princess Mira not once but many times. You have guided our generals, defended the city, and saved lives. You have proven that courage is not limited to blood or origin. But a choice must be made, a decision that affects not only you but the future of Valora." Mira stepped closer to Tom, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Mother," she said, her voice firm yet gentle, "he is loyal and brave. He is one of us now. Without him our city might have fallen." The Queen's gaze softened slightly at her daughter's words, though her expression remained stern. "Your words are true, Mira. I cannot deny that this human has shown heart and wisdom. Yet Valora's future is delicate. We cannot allow our decisions to be swayed by emotion alone. The safety of our people must come first. Tom felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. He had risked his life countless times for Mira and Valora, but now the weight of the Queen's judgment pressed upon him. He could not control her choice. All he could do was stand and face it with honesty. You have given everything, the Queen continued, and for that I honor you. But freedom comes with responsibility. Valora is fragile, and every action has consequence. You may choose your path. You may stay and serve Valora openly, accepted by the people and honored by the Queen, or you may return to your world, bearing the knowledge that you acted with courage and honor. Tom looked at Mira, whose eyes glowed softly with hope and trust. He knew his answer. Staying would mean commitment, a life among people he barely knew, a world so different from Earth. Returning would allow him to live freely, yet the thought of leaving Mira and the people he had grown to care for weighed heavily on his heart. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. I choose to stay, he said firmly. I cannot turn away from the people I have come to care for. I cannot leave Mira unprotected. My life is yours to serve Valora and defend it as long as I am able. The Queen's eyes searched his face for any sign of deception. Finding none, she nodded slowly. Then it is decided. You will remain in Valora. You will serve not as a stranger or prisoner, but as a trusted ally. The people will know your courage and your loyalty. You will bear responsibility for your actions, and honor will be your guide. Mira's face lit with joy, and she reached for Tom's hand, holding it gently. Thank you, she whispered. You have made a choice that honors us all. The Queen's expression softened further, and she gestured toward the council chamber. Let it be known that Tom of Earth, the human who risked his life for Princess Mira, is recognized as a protector of Valora. Let his deeds inspire our people. Tom bowed deeply, humbled by the words. The generals and advisors nodded in respect, their earlier doubt replaced by admiration. The city of Valora, once suspicious of the human from the stars, now looked upon him as a symbol of courage and loyalty. The days that followed were filled with celebration and preparation. Tom trained with Valora's guards, refining tactics and teaching strategies from his own world. Mira studied with him, learning how to defend herself and assist in the protection of her people. Together, they became a team, their bond strengthened by shared trials and trust. Despite the celebrations, Tom remained vigilant. He knew the enemy forces still lurked beyond the forests, waiting for another chance to strike. Valora's safety was not guaranteed, and every decision carried weight. He walked the walls each night, observing, planning, and preparing. Mira often accompanied him, her presence a source of strength and hope. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Tom and Mira stood atop the highest tower. The rivers below shimmered like silver ribbons, and the towers glowed with soft light. Mira leaned slightly on Tom's shoulder, her eyes reflecting the moons above. You have given much, she said softly, not only to me but to all of Valora. You are part of our world now. Tom smiled gently, and I will continue to be. Valora has become more than a city to me. It is a home, and you have shown me that courage and loyalty can cross worlds even from the stars. Mira nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. The Queen has accepted you, but she will always watch. That is her way. Yet I trust you completely, and so do the people. Tom felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had risked his life for a princess, faced battle and judgment, and emerged not as a stranger or captive, but as a protector and ally. His journey had been fraught with danger, but it had also revealed the strength of the human heart. The days turned into weeks. Valora grew stronger under the combined efforts of Tom, Mira, and the Queen's Council. The people learned to rely on the human who had proven himself, and his presence inspired courage among them. Scouts reported no further enemy movements for a time, though Tom knew vigilance was always necessary. One morning, Queen Alara summoned him once more. He entered the hall with Mira by his side, ready for instruction or judgment. You have shown loyalty beyond question, the Queen said, her voice calm and steady. You have earned your place here. Not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as a member of our world. Your presence is no longer a danger, but a gift. Valora is stronger because of you. Tom bowed deeply. I'm honored, Your Majesty. I will serve Valora to the best of my ability and protect this world as I would my own. The queen studied him for a long moment, then nodded. So be it. From this day forward you are free in Valora, but remember the responsibility that comes with freedom. Protect our people, honor our ways, and guide with wisdom. The future rests in your hands as well as mine. Mira smiled brightly, her hand resting lightly on Tom's arm. You have chosen wisely, she said, and we are grateful. Valora is yours as much as it is ours. Tom felt a surge of gratitude and pride. His journey had begun with a crash in a desperate fight to save a princess. It had led him through battles, suspicion, and judgment. And now he stood free, accepted and respected in a world that was once completely foreign. He had risked everything, and in return he had found purpose, friendship, and a place he could call home. That night, as the twin moons cast silver light across the city, Tom and Mira walked the palace gardens. The river shimmered, the flowers glowed softly, and the air was filled with quiet energy. Tom looked at the horizon, knowing that challenges would come again, yet feeling ready for whatever Valora might face. I am glad I stayed, he said quietly. Mira smiled, her eyes reflecting the moons above. So are we, she said. Together we will protect Valora and honor all who live here. The city slept peacefully beneath the twin moons, unaware of the human who had risked everything for the princess. Tom had proven that courage, loyalty, and a brave heart could transcend worlds. He had become part of Valora, not as a stranger or prisoner, but as a true protector. And in that moment he knew that no matter what the future held, he would face it with courage, alongside Mira, and for the people he had come to love. The suns would rise again, and with them, new challenges. But Tom was ready. Valora was ready. And the bond between the human and the princess, tested by danger and strengthened by trust, would guide them through whatever lay ahead. In the heart of Valora, a city of light and hope, a human had risked his life and earned a place among the stars. And in doing so, he had proven that the courage of one could change the fate of many.